Serious, Redditors who witnessed a murder. What is your story? I was at the grand opening of a sports bar the night that Manny Pacquiao fought Chris Algieri. The bar and was jam-packed beyond belief. So packed that you couldn't get back to your table without shimmying through the other patrons, trying not to put your butt on the back of their necks. Anyway, a guy who had paid, entered and had some drinks went outside to take a smoke break. No smoking allowed in the bar. There was still an incredibly long line to get inside, so he tried to come back in the exit door. The bouncer told him he couldn't and that he would have to wait in line and come back in the main entrance, though he didn't have to pay again. The guy was pee and tried to push past the bouncer. The bouncer eventually pushed him out the door and locked it. The guy then apparently went back home, grabbed his girlfriend's gun and came back to the bar. I learned this after the fact talking to the owner and via news coverage. He waited until someone left out the exit door, snuck inside and shot the bouncer in the back of the head several times. The bar was so packed that chaos ensued. Almost everyone hit the floor immediately. There were tables, food, drinks, keys, phones and people all laying on the floor. Other people ran outside. My buddies and I waited for a few minutes until we knew the coast was clear and then got the heck out of there. At the time, we didn't know all of what had happened. As we exited the bar, we literally had to step over the dead bouncer to get to the door. I was lucky enough to find my phone and keys amid the melee. One of my buddies found his keys but not his phone. He never got it back. Sadly, that sports bar never really recovered from that incident. It closed down for about a month before reopening, but it never achieved the popularity that it should have due to that incident. Jesus. Imagine shooting a bouncer in the head for not letting you in. Like, that is such an insane freaking response, I can't even fathom it. Dude should never ever be allowed to roam the streets again. Saw the guy push his passenger, an old man, out of a car. The car was screeching speeding round a corner, the door flings open and the driver very clearly pushed the old man out. Not the greatest thing for a 10-year-old to witness. The even weirder thing was that as I stood there in shock while the old man was completely still in the road, a weird man walking past me chuckled and said, "It wasn't you, was it?" Then chuckled again. It hasn't affected my life but think about it every now and then. At a pub about 2 years ago, large group out the front arguing. Then a guy got blindsided and punched in the side of the head. The guy that hit him sprinted off into the darkness. The guy went down and never got up. His wife watched it happen and was trying to get him to wake up while the fighting and arguing continued. 30 minutes go by and the guy hasn't moved since being punched. Bar staff have been doing CPR on him for about 15 minutes before emergency services finally arrive and continue. Turns out he was brain dead on impact. They kept him alive somehow until the morning but turned life support off the following afternoon. The guy was 46, at his local bar and got killed. Heaps crap thing to see, I'll never forget that night. The guy that hit him was 19, got charged with murder and is in jail as we speak. I didn't actually witness the murder-suicide but I saw the direct aftermath seconds later. I was 6 years old at my babysitter's house after school. The husband came home drunk and demanded he speak with her in the backyard. A little bit afterwards their dog is freaking out demanding it come inside. I went out back and the dog led me to them. The husband shot my babysitter and then himself. She was gone but he still had labored breathing before dying in front of me. It's still one of my most vivid memories 21 years later. Bro, I'm so glad the boyfriend didn't see come after you. So sorry you had to witness that at such a young age. When my dad first moved to North Hollywood in the 80s, he woke up one morning to some guy getting beaten by 3 guys, one with a baseball bat, across the street from his apartment. Police were called but the kid ended up dying on the scene and my dad watched it all from his bedroom window. I don't remember if he ever learned any more details. Welcome to the neighborhood. Was working in the off-campus residences at my university. Over Christmas break when most of the students had gone home, I was still there keeping an eye on the place. I was in my little office that was in one of the apartment blocks when I heard a pop 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 noise. It really just sounded like some kids were letting off some small fireworks in the stairwell or something. I looked out of my office window, which was just outside of the bottom of the stairwell, facing south, to see if I could see what was up. As I looked out, 3-4 dudes come running down the stairs and take off running to the east toward the complex entrance. About 10 seconds later, another dude comes down the stairs and slowly walks off toward the southwest. I went outside to check and see if what damage had been caused by the fireworks, and went up the stairwell. As I got to the top, there was no fireworks debris or smoke or anything, but I saw a cell phone lying on the ground, and a single small hole in the wall outside the door of one of the units. At the other end of the corridor there was another stairwell, and at the bottom of that there was an old beater car just idling with the headlights on and a few of the doors just hanging open. Something was definitely fishy about it. I definitely had the what if those were gunshots thought, but there was no gunpowder smell or blood or anything besides that one little hole. To play it safe, I called the cops who said they were sending someone over. The station is very close to the housing complex and they were there in less than a minute. I gave them a quick summary of what I saw, and they split up to go in the directions I told them that the people had headed. Was less than 30 seconds later that they found the lone guy that had gone off to the southwest. Turns out he had been shot multiple times and had managed to walk across the parking area and turn behind a building before collapsing on the grass. They tried CPR, but when the ambulance arrived the paramedics pronounced him dead on the scene. The other cops who had gone east did find the other guy and arrested them. I ended up having to go testify in court during the trial of the guy that was supposedly the shooter. I told them basically what I wrote up here, but didn't know any of the people involved and never saw faces or anything of any real help to the police. I think I was basically there to establish timeline or something like that. Anyhow, I heard that it was basically a drug deal gone wrong. 2 different gangs from 2 different counties thought the residents' apartments would be empty over the holidays and set up a deal. One party tried to rip off the other party and someone got shot. As I understand it, the shooter guy got sent to prison. Gang violence is so sad. That must have been hard to see. Hopefully you are doing well. When I was 10, my uncle murdered my mom's boyfriend at our house. It wasn't in the house, but he chased him through our house and killed him outside in front of the house. It really destroyed a part of our family as well as relationship between my mom and grandmother. It was 30 years ago and I am only one alive besides my uncle that was there that night. I wanted to thank everyone for the kind words and the questions. Kinda therapeutic to talk about. This was when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, so late 80s. My friend's mom had picked us up from school in her station wagon and I was in the way back. There were probably 6 or 7 of us kids in the car and we were stopped at a traffic light across from a homeless shelter, about to get onto the interstate. This guy is walking down the street with an armful of chewing tobacco and drops a pack. A homeless guy leaning up against the wall picked it up. There was an angry exchange in which the guy refused to give back the tobacco, so the other guy kicked him and stomped him to death on the sidewalk. Oh my god, that's terrible. So brutal. A drunk man was pushed down some stairs by the bouncer. Unfortunately, the drunk man was unable to catch himself and instead spun around and landed on the pavement with the back of his head making first contact. He was alive for a little while but quickly succumbed to his wound and arrested on the pavement. He was declared dead 15 minutes later in ED after being transported by ambulance. There was no CCTV or clear evidence of malicious intent that would hold up in court, and the man was known as a drunk and had no friends or family. It was ruled an accidental death. I had to walk past that spot most days going to work and will never forget his face. The look of mystified horror followed by the glassy-eyed slack-jawed expression that come with death. I was the medic that transported the man. I was by his side from start till the declaration. One of the most visceral experiences of my career thus far. Very similar thing happened in Boston while I lived there about 6 years ago, except the drunk didn't die despite the bouncer dumping him behind a dumpster. Was walking home one day and saw a couple arguing. The dude started walking off away from the girlfriend's car, and apparently she was not happy with that. She proceeded to get in the car and wait about 5 minutes till he was way off down the sidewalk. I was walking on the opposite side of the road as him and all of a sudden I see a blur and he goes flying like a rocket. She must have been going at least 60 miles per hour. He flew through the air and hit a tree, died instantly. The woman then screamed out the window at his body and drives away. There was blood smeared all over the crumpled hood and I'll never forget the sight of his contorted body at the base of the tree, almost folded in half. I had to talk to the police and within the hour they caught her at a car wash, trying to clean the blood and chunks off the hood and grille of her car. I was 16 at the time. For those of you concerned, thank you. I actually did have to see a therapist for a few months after. I am doing very well right now. However, I don't think I'll ever fully get over it. It's one of those things that always sticks with you. I was 16 driving down the highway in the passenger seat of my mom's car, about 3:30 p.m. Traffic came to a complete halt and we were in the right-hand lane. So as we're creeping along, a semi-truck appears on the shoulder of the highway. Door swung wide open. As we move past, there is a trail of blood down the doorstep onto the concrete and then leading about 20 feet further down the road. As we crept further, the trail of blood ended with a man lying face up completely covered in blood. There were no police or ambulances there yet. This was on a highway in the suburbs of a major metropolitan area in the US, so plenty of people saw before the scene was taken hold of by emergency services. Turns out the truck driver had a partner with him. They got into an argument and the passenger stabbed the driver like a dozen times and then escaped. The murderer was caught about an hour and a half away, one state over. 2 days later, I have to imagine that I was about 5 minutes behind the truck pulling over because the police can be in that spot in about 30 seconds. Being in the passenger seat in the right lane of the highway, I was about 10 feet from the body. Haunting image. That's pretty horrifying. Obviously a lot of led up to the story, but I'm not going there. My girlfriend was taking her dog for a walk while I got showered for work. I'm in the bathroom when I hear voices coming from outside. I look out the window and to my horror there is my girlfriend talking to her abusive stepfather, who is standing about 5 feet away from her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew it wasn't good. Stepfather raises his shotgun, shoots my girlfriend in the face, then shoves shotgun under his chin and pulls the trigger. Murder-suicide. Life's never been the same for me since. Lots of messages, so I wanted to say this. Thank you all for the support. It was 20 years ago and though I'll never get over it, I can live with it. It took nearly 2 years before I came to realize there was nothing I could have done to stop it. I will never forgive her family for knowing what that man was doing to her and they did nothing about it. I'm not really good with words, but I wanted to thank everyone for the kindness and support. I'm so sorry for your loss, and even though that pain can never fully go away, I hope time has helped. I was around 8-9 years old and we were on a vacation in a vacation village. While we were doing checkout with my family, my father was at the desk while we were waiting at the lobby couches. An argument broke out between two guys who were at the lobby bar. I actually don't know what it was about, because it was in another language. One of the guys grabbed a bottle, smashed it and attacked the other one, hit him in the neck. That guy fell on the floor, and there were blood all over the place. My mother closed my eyes after that, and took us out while other people get involved. Years later I've learned that guy lost his life. I saw one guy try to dramatically break a beer bottle at a bar during a fight. He smashed it on the table and instead of the end breaking off like in the movies, it broke down the middle and slashed his hand to heck. Blood was gushing. In the parking lot of a strip mall in Washington state, a guy walked into a jewelry store and did an armed robbery. Plainclothes security guard waited until the robber exited and shot the robber in the back. I was in a car and I didn't hear the shot, but I did see him fall and some shoppers gathering around his body. We drove by slowly to see if help was needed. When I saw how fast the pool of blood was spreading, I pretty much knew he would not survive. So, I live in a country where it's pretty normal for public buses to steal each other's routes, schedule, whatever. When I was 8, I was in one of them buses. I guess my driver was the one acting wrongfully. Along comes another bus. This is early in the morning, both buses are full. I was going to school, 2nd grade. The driver of the other bus stops my bus. Both drivers get off to yell at each other. The second driver has a gun, but he is older, more feeble. So my driver grabs the gun and shoots him once. I saw everything as I was sitting by a window. When the body falls and I see the red stain, the world goes quiet for me. The last thing I heard was the soft gunshot, .22 caliber maybe. I get off the bus and walk to school, 20-25 blocks away. I don't remember a single thing about it. When I got to school I was pale and wouldn't react when spoken to. Eventually, I came to and was able to speak normally and matter-of-factly. Can't stand the noise of fireworks since. Fun fact, my now husband was in the other bus and also witnessed everything. I live in Syria and I've been forced to leave my house due to ISIS attacks on our city. My family and I lived for 2 days under light artillery between ISIS soldiers and regime affiliated troops that lived in the neighborhood. As I looked through the window I saw an ISIS soldier running with a rocket launcher screaming. Then there was a hole in the building in front of him and the 3 men inside were blown to pieces. He quickly got shot in the chest and laid on the ground, dead. Oddly enough, and lucky for me, this incident didn't make a permanent damage on my well-being. I speak of it with the family sometimes to remember how we miraculously managed to survive. Dang, it sucks to know you're in this situation. I hope you can get to a safe place soon and wish you so much luck. When I was 6, my family went to see Sesame Street on Ice downtown. When we were leaving, a little girl my age was struck by a van and dragged across the parking lot. I remember the mother jumping on the windshield screaming at the driver while the van was still moving. My mom was a nurse and was helping until the ambulance arrived, but she was already dead. I can still remember the screams and lifeless body of that little girl. This was over 30 years ago. Welp, that's enough of this thread. I'm out. Was going to work one day when a van hit a cyclist. Saw the person fly through the air. Looked like a mannequin. I kept talking to the body, but with blood coming from his ears, I knew he was dead. Unfortunately, they never released the name of the victim. I would have liked to have visited the grave. Some of the other witnesses were messed up, but I was, and still am, okay with it. I read that one's hearing is the last thing to go. If I am ever in that bad situation again, I will talk more conversationally. I saw my cousin murdered when I was a kid. We were back in my hometown. He was sitting in his car in front my aunt's house and he was gunned down. I was on the porch with his siblings. It was random, but he didn't live the most righteous life, so we honestly never know the motive and they never found out who did it. I saw a few in Mexico. The most memorable one was the first one I saw while I lived there. I was cleaning out a house with some buddies of mine. A guy was walking down the block. We heard gunshots. I looked out the window and there was that same guy laying out on the sidewalk. A black pickup truck sped by. I think there were 4 guys on back, all with bandanas covering their faces, all with guns in their hands. The thing that stuck with me is they all looked younger than me. I was 22 at the time. According to the paper that was released right after he was from out of town and likely they mistook him as someone else, he was 17. His blood was left on the streets for days. One of my friends said he heard 14 shots, but I only heard 6. I have the whole experience written down as it was so foreign to me. This was in Altamirano. I used to stay up late at night trying to think of what kind of life would lead those guys to do a drive-by like that. I also wonder about that 17-year-old. I'm sure he had family visiting there. Used to work at a movie theater. I would change the sign near the road in the middle of the night. I saw a taxi pull up to the bus stop. It stayed there for quite some time. That's what caught my attention, was how long it was there for. Saw a dude get out and quickly walk away. A week later I was changing the sign again and I hear a voice below asking me to come down. After he showed me his badge I obliged and he asked if I had seen anything weird the week before. I replied only that a taxi had sat there for a while and a guy got out. I had to then go look at lots of mugshots. Turns out I was the sole witness to some poor bastard's murder without even realizing it. Wish I had a better look at the guy so I could get him some justice. Was at a bar. Couple guys got into an argument. The whole thing subsides. Then a few hours later one of them leaves. As the guy is leaving, the other guy he was arguing with earlier runs outside and punches him in the back of the head, killing him instantly. Only other time I've seen someone die was on the highway. Not murder here. Guy jumped off a bridge I was driving under, had a rope tied off and hanged himself. Got smashed by a truck before he died though. Caused a really big mess. Heck, maybe the rope broke his neck before getting plowed into. IDK. An old neighbor of mine was 6 feet 5 inches and like 250 pounds. Got smacked on the head with a bottle at a bar and got permanent brain damage because he told a guy to frick off for hitting on his girlfriend. He now has difficulty talking and has trouble remembering how to do menial tasks some days. Avoid arguments at bars if you can. You never know how they may impact your life. Was in an Islamic State suicide attack. 78 fatalities, 500 wounded. The screaming is something that will be with me forever. I'm sorry anyone has to experience that. I'm glad you are here to tell. When I was a kid I witnessed a hit and run. An SUV ran into a pedestrian and sped away. I don't think they ever caught the person. The poor girl they hit flew into the air. The SUV passed underneath her. She landed on the road and she died. It was heartbreaking. She couldn't have been over 25 years old. Granted this wasn't murder, but I just couldn't believe there was a person there 1 second and then gone the next. It always made me wonder how people could live with themselves after doing that. Then I'd wonder how many people I knew would do the same thing. Eventually I wondered if I was capable of doing something like that too. All it's made me realize is hypotheticals are dumb because we really never are who we think we are. I also appreciate every year I get older. 5 years ago, there was an attempted home invasion at my house when I was 18. I was downstairs watching Top Gear when I hear somebody trying to break in the door. My father, military type, very protective, confronted the guy and the guy turned around and shot my dad in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun. My dad was able to fire off a couple shots afterwards killing him. But my father already was on the ground dead. This is the very short version. First time writing this out. Still surreal to think about. Turned out the guy was a felon with 6 butcher knives down his pants, presumably trying to find some reason to hurt someone. I consider my father a hero. Most people considered his actions stupid or irresponsible. Local internet commenters. But you had to know him to understand his mentality. If you want the full detailed story and my recovery, or if you're struggling with PTSD, PM me. I'm so sorry that happened. Your father gave his life to save his family. He was shot and dying and managed to kill the intruder. Hang in there and make your dad proud of you. Worked in a pub when I was younger. Walking round cleaning tables and emptying ashtrays. Back in the days you could smoke indoors. And a couple of guys are standing at a high table talking. Another guy comes in and starts shouting with one of the group. Getting a bit heated, so I go over to ask them to calm it down and remove all empty glasses and bottles from the area. As I'm talking to them, the lone guy lunges with a knife, misses me but goes in the chest of the other. He moves into a bear hug with the guy he just stabbed and continues to stab him a further 14 times in the back before running out the building. Spent what seemed like hours putting pressure on the stab wounds waiting for an ambulance, but the guy was dead before they got there. Police caught the guy. I gave a statement and spent a few days in court giving evidence and helping get the guy jailed. Not something I ever want to experience again, as it fricked me up for quite some time. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.